Welcome to season 10 of Accountants Are Sexy, Change My Mind. In this season, we have 10 brand spanking new guests to introduce you to. We'll be talking about things like exit plans, niching your business. You'll meet one of the captains. We're going to talk about finding your spiritual home, and we even have, of course, a discussion on AI and how it can improve your business. So stick with us, but before I introduce you to any guests, please meet our new sponsor, Swoop for Advisors.
For those of you who haven't heard of Swoop for Advisors, we partner with accountants and bookkeepers to help their SME clients get access to grants, loans, commercial mortgages, equity investment, R&D, savings, and much, much more. We're a one-stop shop funding platform for SMEs, helping them find all the best available options in the market across a wide range of products to support their growth at all stages of their life cycle. Our job is to make you look like the heroes in your clients' eyes.
So another massive thank you from me to Swoop for Advisors for sponsoring the show. Before I introduce you to the next guest, can I just ask for you to take a second and make sure that you are subscribed to any channel that you're watching this on, be that Spotify or Apple or iTunes or wherever you are. If you just take a moment to subscribe to the channel, it's really helpful information to us to understand how this podcast is received, and we can just continue to improve it the more we know. So thank you for taking the time, and I'm going to hand you over to the next guest. Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of Accountants Are Sexy, Change My Mind. Jackal.
Never going to get over that.
Well, we'll go into why accountants are sexy a little bit later. But first, I want to introduce my guest today. We've got Daniel from Bots for That with us. And this is a really interesting topic, and I'm super excited to get into it because once again, we're tackling another subject that is totally misunderstood by so many people. And I would love to help you get your message out there. So welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Now, this is the second podcast we've done together, the first being yours, and this is a slightly different, it's going to be a slightly different feel.
Because you came on ours and talked about marketing for bookkeepers and accountants, and now I'm on yours talking about what we do.
Exactly.
The world of bots, the wonderful world of bots and AI that scares most people half to death and bores the other. It's funny, we were in Edinburgh last week and I said, people I talk to and bore with what I do consistently fall into one or two groups. The first group think that bots and AI are going to take over the world and destroy humanity, and the second group thinks it already has. So what's the point in fighting? And that's generally what I find.
It's bonkers. I mean, I read a little bit from Mo Gawad, and he's very much of the opinion that we are going to demolish the world. But he also thinks that we're in a point right now where we can shape the world if we want to, but it has to be done sooner rather than later.
It's a funny one. I'm quite outspoken on this.
Good.
We're on the pirate station, so we can go for it. We can be quite outspoken, can't we? It's interesting, and anyone says that AI is dangerous, it's destroy the world, like we're not doing a decent enough job of that ourselves. I don't think AI is going to destroy it. We're the ones that are going to destroy it. Let's face it. That's a fact. It's funny. We hold it accountable to higher standards than we hold ourselves and each other. When we ever do a demo on something, and maybe the bot doesn't pick up one thing out of 1,000 transactions, and I'll say, it doesn't really work. And I'll say, well, you've just handed me your transaction data set where you made about 25% error rate. We made a 1 in 1,000, and you want to just throw the whole thing away. And that 1 in 1,000 came up because you basically told us the wrong process.
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind? Stop holding things accountable to standards that we can't even meet ourselves. It drives me to distraction, but that's the rant done for the day.
Well, I'm sure that's going to come up again. It's a fair and valid point. I think AI is such a massive topic. When we're talking about AI for processes in your financial systems, probably not that bad,
Yeah.
We're not going to kill the world by pulling data sets in for your financial transactions, are we?
Of course we're not. You know, the thing is, though, what I've learned over the years is that people generally form very deeply held beliefs about things with very superficial information.
Yeah.
And God help you try and change those deeply held beliefs. But ultimately, that's what we have to do on a daily basis. We have to say, well, why do you believe that the bot is going to break its programming, go outside of a predefined script of things, and then maybe just go off and start searching for data and then selling it to random sources? It's just these things they come all the time.
Why people think
that? Yeah. That doesn't help, does it? Thanks, Arnie. Skynet. I hear Skynet all the time. Actually, it's a common one. Yeah.
But let's rewind a little minute, because we jumped in there. I want people to understand a little bit more about you, Daniel, and what Bots for That is. So go back to the beginning for me and just help me out.
Wow. Okay. So my background actually is in finance and accounting. That's how I started off my career. And I started off not in practice. I did consider practice. I actually walked into, when I was trying to start my career, when I was about, there must have been about 17. And I went looking for a placement or a sort of a trainee position in an accounting firm. And I walked into my local town and I went around a few. And I never forget this day. I walked into one firm and I walked up the stairs and I met this guy. And he honestly looked like he was having a breakdown on the spot. And I asked him, I said, I'm just interested to talk to someone about traineeship. And he looked straight through me like I wasn't there, like it was Ebenezer Scrooge or something, like him through a ghost. And some other guy came in and rescued me from him, I think. And I think from that point on, I thought, right, no, practice is not for me. If that's what it does to you, I'm going to find another route. And so I did. I went during the industry route, and I ended up working. I moved up from Devon, where I was born. And I moved up to the area near London, and I started out in a corporate catering company doing payroll of all things, and from there went into management accounts, and I started my studies at the same time. Did my qualifications, and then I ended up in tech world. I ended up in Oracle. Did a few years in Oracle, and from there I went into, because they were one of the early adopters of shared service centers in those days. So we're talking back in the 90s. And I ended up working on actually building shared service centers for Oracle. Then I went to Yahoo, I went to Coca-Cola, I went to various other places, and I sort of got into this route of setting up shared services and outsourcing centers, which is really interesting. It taught me a lot about corporate world and also accounting in corporate world, because most of the centers we set up were far-flung locations to take all of those accounting operations out from really high cost places into these low centers. So it taught me an awful lot about that, and we did that for a number of years. And we I think once I'd left that and I went out on my own, we did a lot more business transformation work, looking at processes. How can we improve them? How can we optimize them? Make them better systems, serve the client better process, that sort of stuff. And I met a guy who was doing the same thing, but with similar background to me, but in IT rather than accounting. And he's, I'm just looking at him because he's over there doing work at the moment. Play, really, professional play. But and we decided to join forces. And from there, we went into very shortly after into automation. We found something as around 2014-15 that the automation that we use went mainstream, and from there we started to build a practice based on automation as opposed to transformation. And rather than sending work to far-flung locations, we put it to locally owned digital resources instead. So it's an alternative to outsourcing, and which a lot of accounting practices still do to this day. So that's one of the things that our bots do, is it offers an alternative to repatriate your work, have full control of it, but with digital resources that are faster, better, cost less money, and give you a better outcome. So that's one of the things that we sort of talk to practices and firms about. And what we've effectively done over the last few years, we built a lot of bespoke, customized automations for large companies, but we've been specializing in building pre-built, off-the-shelf, almost products bots for the bookkeeping and accounting industry. So bots that know and work with Dext and Xero, Sage, QuickBooks, and all these other common systems that are in their tech stacks. and that's where we specialize now, and we're absolutely loving it.
Yeah. So how long have you guys been going?
2012 was when we officially started. Yeah, but a lot of enterprise. We worked with a lot of big companies building automations that were completely customized, fully bespoke on systems that they use, internally, home built systems, big enterprise based systems, Oracle, SAP, Salesforce, things like that.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. So when was the decision made to kind of support the smaller practices that sent the fear of God into you?
I think actually probably the year after we got started, I knew there's maybe less than 1% of companies in any economy is the large ones. The rest will have 50 employees and less. So I knew that the volumes were all in the SMBs, SMEs. So we decided very early on that what we've got to do is take this brilliant technology, very powerful technology, but scale it downwards in terms of accessibility, usability, but also cost. So we started building a model where we could take those really great platforms, but then turn them into a hosted managed service. And that's where we build our Zero and other bots that you can basically then just sign up, get a subscription, go on, pick the bot you want to run, configure it, and off you go. So within minutes, you can be automating processes that you've had people manually doing for decades.
When we going back to where we initially started, AI is a scary topic for some people. And I would imagine that you've been met with quite a lot of resistance along the way. So what kind of stuff comes up for people when they consider using automation?
Yeah, there's a really broad range of responses, I suppose, because a lot of people say, well, we would never use AI. And I said, okay, you might as well switch Zero off then, and Dext. Because they're all using it, and your entire tech stack, you should probably switch all off because they're all using AI. Because it's such a broad thing, everything is AI, and AI's been around actually in ways that we're using it probably for 50, 60 years. The algorithms that were written 50, 60 years ago that we're now using today, that we've now got the computing power and the front end in order to actually get use out of them. So it's used in our mobile phones, it's used in our TVs, it's in our cars, it's in our transport system. It governs everything we do about our banking, our financials, our holidays. Every aspect of our lives has AI in it. So it's one of those things people generally don't realize how pervasive AI has become. They sort of, because ChatGPT came along recently, it feels like it's a brand new invention, but really it's not. It's the equivalent really of having an electric, having an EV now rather than having fuel-driven cars. It's the same sort of thing, but we've had them for, got a couple 100 years.
So how would you define AI then?
I try not to.
Don't take me down.
I genuinely do because it's so broad. Our bots and any automation platform that anyone uses is effectively AI, because automation is really a combination of natural language processing. So a computer can understand how humans speak and read and write. It's workflow, not really much more than that, to be honest with you. It's really those sort of two core things. It's like really a macro. We've been using macros for 30, 40 odd years, and that effectively falls under the banner of AI, because it's commands, it's code, it's screen scraping maybe potentially, and it's natural language processing, which is how computers and humans basically converse. We don't speak code, they don't speak people, so we have this natural language processing in the middle that translates. So all of that is effectively AI as well.
I think that there might be confusion, and I'm certainly not an expert in this area, but there might be a confusion around what's programmed and will remain consistent to what is not programmed, and which is probably the scarier side of AI, which is where it does self-programming and changes are made without our understanding, without our involvement, not necessarily our understanding, but our involvement. So what you do with the apps is very much workflow based. You make the decisions and tell the bots what to do and when to do it.
Yeah, the two ways to think about any automation and AI really is, you've got deterministic, where you have a set of instructions, you program exactly step A, step B, step C, exactly what it's going to do, and it doesn't do anything, can't deviate from that. Yeah, it's like do A, if not do B, if otherwise fail, basically. And most automations actually fall into that bracket. A lot of AI that we've been using for years has been done the same way. And then you have probabilistic. So with AI and probabilistic, you actually can't determine the steps. That's sort of the whole purpose, is you define the parameters and you define the outcomes that you want it to get to, but you don't tell it how it's going to get there. It's a bit like saying, I'm going to see you in Edinburgh next week. You make your own way there. That's how AI works, as opposed to, I want you to get on the train from Euston and then travel to Edinburgh on this route, on this train network. That's the difference really between bots and AI. And I think it is scary in some ways, but ultimately its only purpose is to work that way, because and I don't know if you've and some of your readers may have done, but there's been a lot of development of AI over the last few years. We had Garry Kasparov playing the Deep Blue over chess. He won the first one, he lost the second, he lost everyone after that, because it learns and it can obviously not only learn, but it can computate at a rate that we
from a mastered chess player.
Yeah, but ultimately all it's really doing is speed. Is on the one hand it's just speed, and it's the same thing with Go, with AlphaGo, and it's really the speed. We just can't possibly contemplate the speed that it works out. But what I found to be really interesting, and actually this is a really good one. If anyone wants to read, this is a brilliant one. If you're a really good background.
World by Hannah Fry.
Yeah, really, really superb book. And you'll read loads of instances in there where bots and AI have been used in the judicial system, and it talks all about things like bias and prejudice, and it talks two examples, both cases where we should have interfered or intervened with AI but didn't, and ones where we did and shouldn't have done.
Ones where what?
Where we did but we shouldn't have done.
Okay.
So, for example, there's a great example, I think, in a plane journey, and the AI is doing exactly what it should do, but the pilot decided, well, this doesn't seem right. I can see, I can't see the ground out the window, so he overrode it and crashed it straight into the floor. So there's examples on both sides where we should intervene but didn't, and vice versa. There's lots of examples in everyday life like that, and I guess work's no different really. When you're doing stuff, you're producing a set of accounts. There's a lot of things that you can leave to AI to do. The problem with outcomes of AI is trying to understand them. Try and I guess reconcile, why did it make that decision? There simply isn't enough time in our lifetimes to go back over that in order to actually do it. So that's the challenge, is you have to take it at its face value. When it produces a result, you've got to allow that pattern to continue to develop, because it's only with developing and using more data and producing more outcomes that it will learn and adapt as it goes. But that takes time. We build very simple, even AI automations for document understanding, for example, and you've got to give it thousands of real examples to truly learn. It's just treat it like a brand new person, really. No one walks into an office with no experience and says, right, I'm going to do a balance sheet now. It's hours and hours. It's the same thing with AI. It does take time.
Yeah, that's exactly the analogy that was coming up into my head. It takes 100 hours to become an expert in something. So it will take AI less time than that, but still as many occurrences.
Yeah, it really does. And there's levels of it as well. The stuff that we're starting to see with the large language models that ChatGPT has, everyone's now plugged into those in some way, shape or form.
Oh, you can tell that by the amount of emojis that are on our social media content.
You can. And it's not foolproof. That's the thing. We shouldn't hold it to, just because it's a machine, it doesn't mean that it's not going to make mistakes, because ultimately, who is it learning from?
So this is where Mo Gaudet comes in. He's not against AI, but he's definitely for using it in an appropriate way and training it to be a nice thing. Because if it doesn't understand it being that an undescribable it, but whatever it is won't understand the context. So if you teach it to be nasty, or teach it to make bad choices, or do you know what I mean? Basically, it's only ever going to be as good as the information we give it in the first place.
Just like we are.
That's what it comes down to.
Just it's flawed because we're flawed. That's
but
the
we
thing.
have to remember that it's not that there's a difference between programmed, and we've already set the perimeters, and that's what it's going to deliver, to not programmed and it continuously learns. We have to make sure that that's right in the first place. But I want to come on to more about the uses of it. I really want to make sure that people understand how it can be used. So what kind of things is it, what kind of jobs is it taking away? And is it going to steal all of our jobs?
The elephant in the room, isn't it? It's, I mean, I suppose our history is littered with examples of technology displacing jobs. It's a bit like the gravediggers complaining about the invention of drugs and modern medicines. We're out of work here. It's a bit like that, and it's always been that way since the dawn of time, I suppose. Since
this is our technical. What's it called? Revolution. Like the engineer, all these different time periods have their different challenges, and that's just growth, isn't it? Change is growth.
It is, yeah, and most change is quite uncomfortable, unfortunately, as well. Some of us come through it better than others. Some embrace it more than others. Some are leaders, some are laggers. But ultimately, it all happens, doesn't it? I think I was reading something the other day that what was the name? I've forgotten his name. Something Clifford. Back in the 90s, predicted that the internet was just a fad and it won't last. Well, I think that's why I said earlier, you've just got to embrace, you might not like it and you don't have to choose it, but at least make it a choice as opposed to something that's been done to you, But ultimately now, we're seeing so many applications for it. From the very basic low level replacing of manual, repetitive, mundane work that no one really wants, especially the new generations coming through. No one really. When I studied accounts, I'd quite happily sit there till 1 o'clock in the morning doing stuff that people, my generation before me probably wouldn't have batted an eyelid either. But they don't really want to do that anymore. They want to get onto the sexy stuff. They want to get into the analysis, the interpretation. And rightly so, they want to be business embedded, being a real business partner and helping them run and grow their businesses, which is exactly what accountants are really good at. I think inserting.
If they're not overwhelmed with all of the day-to-day stuff.
Yes, definitely. And there's an argument that, and it's going to have to change. There's an argument that if they're not involved in that baptism, if you like, of doing all that grit work, that they're not going to have the skills and the knowledge to be, really useful accountants. But I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. I don't think you have to, dig a hole to know how to dig a hole. You pick up a shovel and you stand on the ground and you start pushing downwards. That's, so I think there's a lot of the same. I think accountants in the future they'll be more versed with the technology. They'll know how to use it. They'll know how to control it, configure it. So I think the future is for an accountant in terms of training, that's where the professional bodies will probably need to start introducing things in the same way they started to introduce computers to, how you train as an accountant. They'll need to start to incorporate other things like AI into that as well.
Yeah. There is a nagging thing in the back of my mind when I listened to Will Farnell quite a few times, as I would imagine you have too, and I've read his book, and there is still people lagging behind on the use of simple or more simple tools like getting everyone on Zero or Sage or or whatever other one you might want to choose. Can't offend anyone now.
Yeah.
Other ones are available.
They are.
But there is still there needs to be a bigger uptake on the digital transformation of normal businesses. So adding on top of that, the extra layer or the next phase of AI, or is it even a next phase? Am I over-exaggerating that?
I don't think it is actually, because I think there's two things. If you're a firm, and most are now, where you've got a predominant platform, maybe Zero, let's say, but you've also got some clients who also use QuickBooks. Maybe 20% of your business is on QuickBooks. Maybe you've got maybe you're branching out into the US and you've got maybe a NetSuite or something else. The beauty of the bots, it means the bots don't care what system you use. So we've got a bank rec bot, for example. It works on all platforms. It doesn't really care which platform it uses because it uses them all at the same speed, the same rate, with the same outcomes. It does the same thing. So you've got two things. One, you or your clients will no longer care which platform you use, which leads you to the second thing, is which actually means you don't need to find people who are experts on the system. You don't have to train them. You don't have to retain them. It actually removes some of the blockers and the challenges that they've got today because it no longer matters. That's the beauty of it.
That is interesting. And I suppose it can be introducing to the earlier, because what I'm in my head, I just had a little linear kind of process. So not digital, not at all, to hybrid solution, which some people are offering, to fully digital, like Dex and all the full suite. Yeah. Then I was thinking of adding on AI, and that's the kind of way my brain was working. But I guess actually it can come in much, much earlier than that.
It is. So if you're a firm that hasn't really digitized and you're contemplating, how am I going to do this? It's going to be so much upheaval. Well, what you do is you don't just deploy Zero, but you deploy Zero with the Zero bots at the same time. You're not bringing in loads of people with the expertise. You're not bringing in loads of people with bookkeeping to get it all done. You bring in fewer of the right resources with the right skills, along with the bots and AI, and it's effectively just bringing in another piece of the tech stack. So you don't have the big transformation that you've got to go through. You load the system in, you load the bots on at the same time. Most of it's being done then. Then you can actually do the things that matter, which is engaging with your client and just understanding the numbers.
So what jobs, and I do want to get quite granular because I want people who don't have an idea about this to go, I get it now. Like, what jobs do the bots do?
So I know. It's I'm going to start with that gambit. I'm still going to start with that gambit, but the art of the possible is everything from A to Z. That is the thing, and it's just you use more sophisticated or less sophisticated technology to do it. So anything is technically possible. However, if you take standard practice, you've got onboarding clients in the first instance, where actually you've got the marketing stuff as well. So you can do some of the Go proposals and all that stuff. You can close things, get it into the onboarding. You can connect up with any of those KY AML systems that you might be using. You can connect up to your CRM portal. You can connect that up to the Xero or the Sage or QuickBooks or any other ERP system you've got in place. So it can do the connections where the alternatives are you either do it manually or you try to get apps or you try to get some sort of low code type of stuff. And you find gaps and you'll find holes in that, and you'll sort of get a little bit fatigued because you end up with so many apps and it's sort of a little bit overwhelming. So you can fill any gaps down there at that level to transfer data around. Point A, point B, point C, point D. You can move data around very simply with bots. And if the systems change, the great thing is it's easier to change a bot than to have to make a change to the systems or train people. And so it's a lot easier that way. So any of that low level stuff. Moving on, then you've got your day-to-day bookkeeping. You've got getting stuff into the accounts, whether it's receipts and payments and invoices, bank feeds, CSV uploads, all those sorts of things. You've got the bookkeeping itself, so clearing the bank recs every day, making sure that items are matched to the correct things, they're cleared, exceptions are flagged for follow-up. Going into the month end, journals from payroll. If some payroll systems link up well, others don't. You need to get stuff from payroll systems or maybe from HR systems into and get the journals created and posted. Other adjustments, it could be recurring journals, it could be deferred revenue, provisions on AR, any of those types of things can all be done. And then you're moving from the close, you've got the fixed assets, depreciation, all of those can be covered. And then you get into the actual, you close the books, you're about to close the period, you need to get management packs out, you've got to create working papers. The working papers then include, let's go off and look at the analysis, let's look at variances, discrepancies, tolerances, go off and find the source data for those differences. Did it go back to the CRM system? Where were those sales invoices? They were forecasted here, they weren't in there. Was it an invoice missing? Was it too many invoices? Was it a price differential? All of those sorts of things. The data itself, the source data can be dragged, an explanation can be inserted. All of that is possible and a lot more. So there's so much that could be done.
As you were going through that, my brain thinking, how long would that take? How long would that take as a person to do? And what I've got to is an extraordinary amount of time.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, and the way that we always approach it is, you don't have to automate everything fully. Sometimes 50%, 70% is more than enough, because it frees up enough time that you can just use the resources you've got more effectively, more productively, probably more profitably. So it's just about picking the sweet spot. You don't have to. I always say with these sort of things, always start small. Don't try and boil the ocean in one go. Just start small, start somewhere, do one thing, get comfortable with how that works, and then you can start scaling from there. But you always start very, very small and go from there.
The other thing that's the flip side of that is when these jobs that take an extraordinary amount of time have to have somebody obviously doing it, which is a cost to the business. So you earlier on mentioned about making it more cost effective. Like you've had to make the bots cost effective. Where does it sit or have you done a comparison between hiring another member of staff to using automation?
We have actually, yeah, because we get asked that.
I'm sure you do.
There's two things, right? So someone generally we get two answers. Yeah, that's brilliant. That saves all our time. Plus, we can free up the time to do more things. So you get a double hit. First of all, no one's doing it. So there's let's just say that's 2 hours a week. That's 2 hours saved up. But then I've actually got 4 hours a week now, because that extra 2 hours that someone already has can now be spent on value-adding tasks or other things. Or you can just take the savings and not have a person there doing it. You've got the options, right? Yeah, exactly. Same work, done cheaper, better, faster, without errors, for less money. So you can do that. So you've removed the work, and I think that's probably the most important thing. But people say, well, it's only removed 2 hours. Okay, well, if you don't want 2 hours back, great, but think about the other 2 hours you can do. And it's always that's really, you've got a savings cost, but you've got an opportunity cost, and put it in terms that accountants really understand. So you've got a double hit. You've also got the fact that the process probably gets done faster in most cases, right? So a bot will work much quicker than a person. So not only that, but actually the outcome has also been done quicker. So maybe you can also increase the frequency with which you do that. So there may be a task that we only get to do monthly at the moment. But, I mean, we'd love to do it weekly. We just haven't got the resource. I hear that a lot. So now you can run that weekly without taking up any time, and you've also got that time freed up. So these are all things that fall into sort of the business case, if you like, for looking at bots. It isn't just saving 2 hours. It's all the extra things that come along with that. So you might be able to get those numbers faster. You might be able to win more clients. You might be able to satisfy your clients better.
Yeah.
All those things save back-end loading work.
Yeah, it does sound like it's a competitive edge. Like if you're getting all of that stuff done already, then your focus can be elsewhere. I would imagine, and I'm just drawing on a similarity between the marketing world. There is when handing over client work, there's always this fear, and I hear this so much with some people I work with. There is a fear of handing this work over, because what if there are discrepancies? What if there is something wrong with it? What if they've made mistakes? And they sometimes delay getting to the end of it because they don't want those mistakes to be shown. I would imagine that takes away a lot of fear. I'm going to say something else with that. Once it starts working, and you can correct me on that if it works straight away.
Yeah, it's a bit of both, I suppose. Like recently, we launched our bank rec bot. We did actually started this month, and we had our first clients using it. There was 2 clients who were using it actually, and one was they'd taken on a new client, or they'd inherited a new client, I should say. And there were, I think it was around 192,000 unmatched items that they had to deal with as a practice. They've got this client now, but they've got this mess they've got to sort out. So it would have taken a person how many months to get through that. So we just put the bot on it, and it ran. We just ran it for out of hours. So, nice and quiet times, didn't interfere with anybody. Run it overnight for a few hours at night, and in a week it was all gone. And there was a report of, here's the outcome of that, here's what it did, here's what it left. And they actually went through, they did some spot checks, they couldn't find one single thing that was wrong with it. So they were happy to then just let it carry on. The second one is a top 20 something firm. And again, same thing, ran it with a selection, ran it on 50 clients in the first couple of weeks. Again, they loved the concept, loved the idea, they were sold on it, but there was a little bit of healthy skepticism left. Is it really going to do this? And for those first couple of weeks, every single thing was double checked by the person who looks after those sets of clients. Not one amount was wrongly applied or matched. In fact, it found some things that he usually sort of overlooks or misses as errors. So it had 100% cleared with 0% errors. And of course, it took like 4 seconds per line, whereas it's going to take him sort of 2 to 3 minutes per line, because he's got to dip into different systems, come in and out of different lines, use his years of experience and knowledge as well. So there's an awful lot that you can achieve with it, really, in quite a short space of time. Other times you'll need to, it takes a bit more configuration, because everyone's a little bit different, and it might not be wrong, but it's not exactly what they want either. So it's not that it's technically wrong, but it's got to be tweaked. And that's possible.
That's going to be one of the fears for accountants, because the rules are the same, but the application of the rules can differ. And that's one of the things where if you run a bot, it might not run it the way you want it to, but that, as you say, it's down to the configuration of that.
It is, yeah.
Is that a lot of work in most cases?
No. What we do when we approach a new bot, and what we do is we've got a number of firms and practices who are our partners, and they're our partners so that they can tell us their woes, tell us their pains, tell us what works, what doesn't, what they'd like. We build a pipeline with them. That pipeline becomes our roadmap, our public roadmap that we start then developing and releasing the bots for. And the way that we technically approach a build of a bot is, here's the generic common steps that are involved. Go into this system, go to these screens. Those things never change. What we then have is the configuration of the variables. So what is it exactly that you want to do as part of your practice? Do you want to have a policy that is look for this, look for that, but don't check for this? Great. You can do that as part of the onboard. You can do it as part of the run. And a lot of our bots actually get scheduled as well. So rather than going and run them on the spot, a lot of them just get scheduled to run at certain times. It could be a monthly, a weekly trigger. It could be the trigger from another system doing something. There's lots of things that you can do. In the future, you're actually going to be able to talk to our bots with chat and just say, run the bank recs for, all clients, that sort of thing.
I'll believe that when I see it, because at the moment Alexa doesn't even give me the right answers.
Oh well, get on the phone to Phil next week. He'll show you. It's already there. It already exists. So that's not a problem. We just haven't launched it, but those sorts of things are all possible.
Interesting. So the other thing and I keep thinking about the clients that I work with. Typically, they are smaller in their practice. They've got big ambitions, but they're typically smaller. Some of them have only one person. Some just have a few people in the office. Yeah. Those people might not think that automation is for them, or automation and bots are not for them.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
Let me prove you wrong. Is probably the answer. So we deliberately set out to make it affordable for anyone, all the way down to solopreneurs. So we've got our partners who have signed up with us. We've got solopreneurs, bookkeepers who only have a handful of clients, all the way up to top 20 firms and everything in between. So everything scales up and down. We've got plans that meet everyone's budget, that will also be comparable to what it would cost you in the UK, or it cost an outsourced resource in a far-flung location, trying to do the best you can. So we've figured it all out that it not only meets the budget, but it'll meet time-wise. It'll work around the clock. It'll work 24/7, 365. It doesn't take cigarette breaks. It doesn't get COVID. And we've made it. No. So yeah, we've built it that way so that it will scale all the way down to someone with just 10 clients, starting out all the way up to a firm with 10,000 clients and 800 employees, and everything in between.
So this is an affordable way of scaling their practice. Is this a good option to look at to scale before potentially hiring?
Definitely, yeah. So I guess what you can do is every accountant, every bookkeeper can have their own bot, or a bot that supplies them and does work for them. And absolutely, it will scale completely. So if you've got you're a small practice and you've only got a handful of clients, you can't quite, and there's always this tipping point, so I think it's 5 employees, 10 employees, 20. You always get these tipping points where you can't quite afford to bring in enough people, whereas a bot's going to be a more affordable solution. And when you've got lots of those same repetitive, mundane tasks, there's not really ever a need to put anyone on to just do those. You can just have one person that oversees, checks, manages exceptions, and keeps an eye on what the bots are doing. But is more of a part of your business partnering your clients.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've invited a couple of my captains to your bots community. So you have a community. Why? I'm slightly changing, but I'm going to come back to a point. So why is the community in place?
Our community, the Beanies.
Yeah.
Well, it was just a way of communicating and engaging. Really, it was. We're fairly new to. I'd say we're fairly new to the space. I mean, I'm not new to accounting, but we're as a company, we're new to the space, and we just wanted to connect people on a way that we're not, because it's very easy when you put stuff out on your social media. It's all about sell and this and and trying to. We just didn't want it. We wanted to avoid that, so we don't do any selling on the community. We just literally wanted a place where we could gather people together, connect with them, listen to them, give them a chance to talk to one another, talk to each other, share their woes. I know there's lots of places out there, but we thought the best thing is to build our own and allow people to use it and get to know our customers better, really, and then tell us it's a place for them to really share with us what they want for the future, what they don't like, what they do like, what they're afraid of. It's an open forum really to ask. It's like the kind of questions you've asked us today. It's exactly what it's for. That's what we're geared up for. We will be taking that on the road as well, and becoming from taking it from virtual to becoming a physical presence in the new year. We're going to be doing local meetups. It's the same sort of thing. So wherever we've got people on the community, we're going to be landing in to your town and getting together, pizza and beers, and getting face to face with people, just so we can meet them and get to know them better. Of course you are.
I'm right near 0, so I better be on your list.
Of course you are. Looking forward to it.
So the people who are not sure about this and they've still got questions and they might not want to buy right now, or they might just want to just explore this and not dip their toes in at all.
Yeah.
Is Beanie's the place that they should come and kind of do that?
Definitely, yeah. And we're putting resources on there, so we're putting videos on there with demos of the bots. If you want to see, a bit more of the actual bots running, what they include, what they don't include. We've got our website, we've got the social media sites, we've got the Beanies place. We've got so many places where you can just find out information now. There's no commitments to anything. Get in touch, share it. We can do a demo on the Teams call for you. You can see videos of it. We've got our FAQs. We've got information about what it is that we do, how bots work, how do they handle security, access, permissions, all that sort of really, things that IT people have questions about, people that accountants have a question about. It's all there. It's a mine of information, really. So it's and sometimes the most difficult thing is finding what you need. So if you're in any doubt, just get in touch with us, and we'll happily help out.
Yeah, and then you've always got the Friday question as well, which is just hilarious.
There's one I really wanted to put onto that, by the way. It's when we were in Edinburgh, we met with one of the accountants, one of the tax accountants, and I asked him at the end of the interview, tell us your best accountant joke. And it was a brilliant joke, but it's too long to put on the community, but I'm going to see if I can talk to Aaron, see if we can put something on there.
You can actually do it in video form.
Yeah, that's an idea, isn't it?
Jokes are always better presented in video form anyway.
And we did record him telling the joke, so we might just do that.
Oh, there you are then.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you like that section.
So, just to point out, Beanie's community, if in doubt, I will make sure there is a link to that on this podcast somewhere. If you are connected with me and you can't find the link, ask me about it. If you're connected to Daniel and can't find the link, ask him about it.
Yeah.
I'm in that community, so make sure you come over and say hello.
Yeah, exactly that. There's no commitments. It's open. It's easy breezy, as we call it.
And also, if the only thing you did is just learn a little bit more, you're already ahead of the curve.
You are. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's still early enough to get an early mover's advantage. If you get this up and running, you can and you will disrupt your industry and get ahead.
And it doesn't matter if you're working from a kitchen table.
Doesn't matter.
This is accessible.
Bots don't care. They really don't care.
Bots don't care.
They will not judge you. If you want to sit there in your dressing gown, and they will not judge you. They don't care.
It's not dressing gown, it's a wearable blanket.
Yeah, no, I wasn't casting any assertions there, don't worry.
Yeah, I know. One final question for you. You ready?
Always.
What's the sexiest thing about accountants?
Double entry. You did ask.
It was the deadpan face. You've had innuendos before, but they've never been that blunt.
Well, there you go. That's what you get when you come to bots for that.
Amazing. It's so funny. Right. We are going to wrap up there. Thank you ever so much for coming on and being my guest. It's been a real pleasure.
As for me too. Thank you very much for allowing me to do it.
I will see you all soon.
Will do.
And just a final word for me before I let you go. I wanted to say thank you so much for listening to Accountants Are Sexy. When I say your thoughts are the only thing that matters, I truly mean it, because this show is nothing without listeners, right? So please like, subscribe, comment, slide into my DMs. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want more of, and I will try and deliver. Apart from that, I hope you enjoyed today, and I'll see you next week.